What if your thoughts aren't actually yours? You wake up, grab your phone, and start scrolling. 20 minutes vanish. You've absorbed dozens of opinions about what to buy, who to trust, how to live. You think you're browsing freely, but you're being programmed. The strings are already attached, and you're dancing to music you don't even hear playing. Let me tell you about something they don't teach in psychology classes. In the 1950s, a researcher named Solomon Asch gathered people for a simple experiment. Show them lines of different lengths and ask which one matches. Easy, right? But here's the twist. Everyone else in the room was an actor deliberately giving wrong answers, and 75% of participants eventually agreed with the obviously incorrect answer. They abandoned their own eyes to fit in. Now ask yourself, how many times today did you agree with something just because everyone else did? The difference between a free mind and a controlled one isn't about intelligence. It's about awareness. Power Law 13 tells us, when asking for help, appeal to people's self-interest, never to their mercy or gratitude. But here's what most miss. This works because people don't actually know their own interests. They think they want freedom, but they're wired to seek approval. They think they want truth, but they're trained to chase comfort. The system doesn't need chains anymore. It controls you with algorithms, social validation, and the illusion of choice. You get 40 streaming services, but only one acceptable opinion. You get infinite information, but zero time to think. In the darker corners of modern history, there were always those who understood this. Walter Lippmann wrote in 1922 that the average person is too busy and distracted to form real opinions, so they must be managed by an elite who manufactures consensus. He wasn't warning us. He was writing the instruction manual. The first practical action to cut invisible strings is uncomfortably simple. Go 72 hours without repeating any opinion you didn't personally verify. No retweeting, no sharing hot takes, no parroting what you heard on podcasts. Just silence until you actually know something firsthand. It'll feel wrong, like losing your identity. And that's precisely when you'll discover how much of you was just borrowed programming. Research from Princeton showed people would rather give themselves electric shocks than sit alone with their thoughts. They prefer pain to self-examination. The invisible strings are woven from unquestioned beliefs, emotional triggers, and narratives you swallowed whole. They're so subtle that you'll defend your own mental slavery, thinking you're defending your principles. The perfect puppeteer is the one who convinces you that you chose to dance. If you recognized at least one invisible string controlling you today, type awake in the comments. Hit that like button if you want to learn how to cut these strings, and subscribe, because what comes next reveals who's really pulling the levers. How your brain was hijacked before you could talk. The programming started before your first memory. While you were learning words, you were being taught which thoughts were acceptable. And here's the terrifying part. Whoever programmed you was also programmed. It's a mental virus replicating across generations. And most people die without ever examining the source code of their own minds. In the late 1800s, a man named Gustave Le Bon discovered something that governments immediately classified as dangerous knowledge. He studied crowd psychology and found that individuals in groups abandon reason and become suggestible, emotional, and easy to control. His book, The Psychology of Crowds, became required reading for manipulators worldwide. Hitler studied it. So did Roosevelt. So did every modern marketing executive. They learned that you don't control people by force. You control them by making them feel like part of something bigger while removing their capacity for independent thought. Power Law 27 states, play on people's need to believe to create a cult-like following. But the cult isn't always obvious. Sometimes it's called progress. Sometimes it's called normal. Sometimes it's just how things are done. You're not in a cult if everyone around you is in the same one. It just looks like reality. The hijacking is complete when the prisoner starts guarding their own cell. There's a reason why the Prussian education system, designed to create obedient soldiers and factory workers, became the model for modern schooling worldwide. Sit in rows. Don't question authority. Memorize and regurgitate. Get rewarded for compliance. Spend 12 years training to be an employee, not a thinker, then wonder why you feel like something's missing. The system isn't broken, it's working exactly as designed, just not for you. The deepest hack is this: they taught you that your value comes from external validation, that you need credentials, titles, followers, likes to matter. Your brain was wired to constantly feel insufficient, always chasing the next achievement, the next approval, the next hit of manufactured significance. It's the rat pressing the lever again, except this rat has a mortgage and genuinely believes it's free. The second practical action cuts deep. Identify 3 beliefs you defend aggressively and trace them back to their origin. Did you choose them through careful thought, or did you absorb them from parents, school, media, peers? Most people never do this because discovering that your thoughts aren't yours is existentially terrifying. It's easier to be a conscious puppet than face the responsibility of authentic thinking. The hijacking is invisible because you are the hijacking. The program is running so smoothly you think it's your operating system. If you had the courage to question one core belief today, type sovereign in the comments. Drop a like if you're ready to debug your mental programming, and subscribe because the next level exposes who profits from your unconsciousness. How the shadow elite profits from your mental slavery. There's a class of people who don't appear on billionaire lists, don't give TED Talks, don't seek followers. They don't want attention. They want something far more valuable: your compliance, your labor, and your belief that you're free. And the greatest trick they ever pulled was convincing you they're just a conspiracy theory. In 1913, something happened that changed everything, but they don't teach it properly in schools. A private banking cartel gained control over the money supply of the most powerful nation on earth. Not through violence or revolution, but through a meeting on Jekyll Island where 7 men representing a quarter of the world's wealth drafted legislation in secret. When people discovered it years later, they were told it was for their own protection. The fascinating part isn't that it happened, it's that most people still defend the system that emerged from it, never questioning who really benefits. Power Law 48 reminds us: assume formlessness. The real power doesn't announce itself. It operates through intermediaries, institutions, and ideas that seem natural and inevitable. You don't see the puppeteer when you're focused on the puppet show. The shadow elite mastered this centuries ago. They don't need to control you directly. They control the environment where your choices are made, then let you feel free while selecting from their menu. The dark secret keeping everything running is manufactured scarcity. Not scarcity of resources, but scarcity of time, tension, and peace. Keep people busy, stressed, and distracted, and they won't notice the extraction. You're working more hours for less purchasing power than your grandparents, but you're told it's because you're not hustling hard enough. Meanwhile, productivity has tripled, but wages stayed flat. Where did that wealth go? Follow the money upstream, and you'll find people who don't work at all, just own the systems you're trapped in. Philosopher Bertrand Russell wrote in 1932 that modern technology could give everyone a 4-hour workday with higher living standards. That was almost a century ago. Instead, you're grinding 60 hours a week and calling it ambition. It's not a failure of progress. It's successful exploitation disguised as opportunity. The hamster wheel spins faster, but the hamster never escapes. The third practical action requires brutal honesty. Track every dollar you spend for 1 month and ask which purchases were genuine needs versus manufactured desires created by advertising and social pressure. Then calculate how many hours of your life you traded for things you didn't actually want. The answer reveals who's really getting rich from your existence. The shadow elite knows that exhausted, indebted, anxious people don't revolt. They don't even question. And brilliantly, they'll defend their own exploitation, because admitting the truth means admitting wasted years of obedience. If you're starting to see who profits from keeping you asleep, type clarity in the comments. Like this. If you're done funding your own prison, and subscribe, because what's coming next shows you the path to genuine mental freedom, how to become ungovernable in a world of puppets. Real freedom isn't doing whatever you want. It's wanting what you consciously choose. And that distinction separates the 1% who run the game from the 99% who are the game. But here's the final twist. You don't need permission to cut the strings. You just need the guts to realize you've always held the scissors. In ancient Sparta, young warriors underwent the agoge, a brutal training that stripped away everything comfortable and familiar. They weren't just learning to fight, they were learning to think independently under pressure, to trust their own judgment when everyone else panicked. Most modern people would collapse in week one, not because they're physically weak, but because they've never practiced mental sovereignty. They've outsourced every important decision to algorithms, experts, and social consensus. Their strong opinions built on borrowed thoughts. Power Law 1 teaches, never outshine the master, but to become ungovernable, you must reject the premise entirely. There is no master. There never was. Just people who convinced you they were necessary. The moment you internalize this, everything changes. You stop seeking validation and start seeking truth. You stop performing for an audience and start living for yourself. And that scares the system more than any revolution ever could. Being ungovernable doesn't mean being reckless or antisocial. It means having such a strong internal compass that external manipulation slides off you like water off stone. Diogenes the Cynic lived in a barrel, owned nothing, and told Alexander the Great to move because he was blocking the sunlight. Alexander, who conquered the known world, reportedly said, "If I were not Alexander, I would wish to be Diogenes." Why? Because Diogenes had something Alexander's empire couldn't buy: absolute freedom from needing anything the world could offer or take away. The fourth and final practical action is revolutionary. Choose one area of your life and act purely based on what you want, completely ignoring external expectations for 60 days. Could be minor: how you spend mornings, what you eat, who you give your time to. Could be major: career change, ending toxic relationships, relocating entirely. Size doesn't matter. What matters is experiencing genuine autonomy. It'll be uncomfortable. People will push back. Perfect. That's how you know you cut an important string. The 99% spend their lives preparing for a future that never comes, sacrificing present moments for promised rewards that keep moving further away. They call it responsibility. The 1%, ungovernable, build each day intentionally, not because they have no problems, but because they consciously chose which problems are worth having. Freedom isn't escaping constraints, it's selecting your own. If you're ready to become ungovernable, type unbound in the comments. Smash that like if this video cut at least one invisible string in your mind. Subscribe to continue this journey of awakening, and share this with someone still dancing without knowing who controls the music. The strings are invisible, but the scissors were always in your hands.